I don't know if you can hear that, but he's just decided to make some noise. So today we're streaming on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And thank you as always to Restream for helping us out here. We're on the Restream platform, and Restream is a multi-streaming platform, which is pretty amazing. So we're in many places at once right now. Today I'm here with Alisia Barcan. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
How do you take your coffee? And if you don't drink coffee, how do you start your day?
I don't drink coffee. So I start my day usually with some water to hydrate myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I try, it doesn't happen every day, but I try to have a morning routine where I would spend some time quietly or meditating or doing some stretches before I jump at my computer and sit for like 8+ hours.
Yeah.
So I try and do that. It doesn't always work, but I try.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And of course, you are UK based. So
Yeah.
what time is it out there?
It is 2 p.m. here.
Awesome. So this is our first international conversation. So if you're watching right now, say hi to us in the chat. Let us know where you're listening from, because I'd love to see where everybody's sort of jumping in from. So awesome. Cool. So tell us a bit about where you are on your entrepreneurial journey.
Right. I am in the full-time entrepreneurship stage right now. I started my business in 2017, and I was running it as a side gig for a while. And since February 2019, I am doing it full-time. I'm a financial coach and consultant, and I like to think of myself as an editor of people's financial stories because I help them rewrite them. So I work with individuals and small business owners who want to improve their finances, either personally or in business, but they don't have the skills or the knowledge or the confidence to do so. So that's where I come in.
That's amazing. So how does one rewrite their financial story?
Well, first you need to know what the story is, and you need to be accurate about it, and you need to be factual about it. What I mean by that is a lot of our stories are intertwined with emotion. So you might have some debt or whatever, and the way you relate to that debt is what's impacting your ability to see it for what it is. So some people come to me and they are £2,000 in debt, and they think that's the end of the world, but that's just their emotion. I worked with people who were 5 figures in debt, and therefore the comparison between the two, it's just all about how we relate to it. So by factual, I mean, what is your story without your own interpretation of it, without your emotions intertwined in there, just the facts. So for a lot of people, this is an important step and quite a difficult one, to detach themselves from the numbers, because it's their money, it's their numbers, and to be able to see the story for what it is before they can change it. So we do a lot of work around mindset and how they relate to money, the relationship they have with money, the emotions they have around money. And of course, after we've done this work, we also look at the practicalities, and we do budgeting and putting together a plan for them to reach their goals, and business stuff on the side with people who want help on the business side of money.
That's great. So when it comes to emotion, how can we detach ourselves from because money's a hot topic, right? And a lot of us, myself included, over different times in my life, money's been, either something that I worried about or something that I was really scared of, or, I didn't have enough of it, or, maybe I didn't know what to do with what I had, or whatever the case is. How do you begin to divorce yourself from the emotion of money?
Yeah. So first of all, we need to understand what emotion is, because when I ask people, okay, what's your emotion around money? They start to say, oh, I feel like I don't have enough money. I feel like I'm not good with numbers. Those are not feelings. Those are thoughts. A feeling would be, I feel discouraged, I feel disempowered, I feel scared. So trying to name that emotion, and if emotion doesn't cut it for you, just think about a state of being that money creates in you. So the first thing is to identify the emotion, and the second one is to know that emotions come from thoughts. They don't happen in a vacuum. So the next step would be to identify those thoughts. Why do you feel disempowered? Why do you feel powerless or inadequate or whatever it might be? And then we work on that thought. Where's the thought coming from? Is that true, or is it just your interpretation of the fact? Does it apply to everyone and anyone? And probably the answer is no. So if it doesn't apply, it's not a fact, it's just a thought. So working on those thoughts and where they come from, a lot of them come from childhood. They come from what our teachers and our parents and their siblings taught us, whether they wanted to or not, from what we saw inside the house when we were kids, and how our parents treated money and their dynamics, and whether they fought about money, that kind of stuff. So all of those beliefs, we need to bring them to the surface, start talking about them, because that's how you deal with the emotion, knowing, why do I feel like this? And it might be, I don't deserve money. I am not good with money. I am not smart enough. Who am I? So for example, for people who come from more modest background and end up earning quite a lot of money, some of them say, who am I out of all of my siblings to be earning the most? Because I'm not the smartest. I don't identify as being the smartest. And also, how is this affecting my relationship with my family when I earn what all of my siblings put together? That's how much money I make. So it's a lot more, it's a complicated process, and a process that takes quite a lot of time. But identifying the emotion, naming the emotion and identifying the thought behind it is the first step.
That's amazing. So I would love to hear from you all in the chat, and we have some folks saying hi here. What questions do you have about money, and money mindset for Alisa? Because I think this is a really great niche that you're in, right? Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like, and I know you're a financial coach, so maybe this goes without saying, but I think it bears sort of calling out here, is that you're actually asking questions that an executive coach would ask, but they all relate to money, right? So whereas I might talk to an executive coach about my emotions around power or leadership, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm bringing to the table in terms of, what I've learned about that. You're doing that completely just for money.
Yeah, so I'm doing it around money, but it's not, we don't stick to money only, because it would be foolish of me to assume or to state that money is in its own bubble and it doesn't affect every other area of your life, because it definitely does. It affects your work, it affects your family life, your relationships, your social life, friendships, and so on. Mm-hmm. So we do look at other areas of your life, and I like to look at money as a tool to support your other goals. If you just want money for the sake of money, I will ask you the question, why, until I get a different answer. Because I don't think that anyone is motivated intrinsically by money necessarily. They want that money because of something. Right. It might be status, it might be because they want to support their family, it might be because they want to give to charity and they want to support causes that they believe in. Whatever it is, we use money as a tool to enable other goals and other objectives that people have in different areas of their lives. But yes, I focus mostly on money. That's, I have a love for numbers. I have always enjoyed working with them. I qualified as an accountant, and I had a career as an accountant and an analyst before I decided to move into entrepreneurship. So I think I will always talk about money regardless of what I end up doing in the future. And money will always be a subject that's on the table. And that's funny, I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, people are not very open to talking about this subject. In fact, they would probably avoid it at all costs and talk about something completely different than money. And I want to I'm fighting against that. I want us to have open and honest
Yeah.
conversations around money because our financial situation actually has a toll on our mental health. And you see a lot of people for whom money is a huge source of stress, and it can lead to anxiety and depression. And we need to talk more about money and how
Yeah.
what people can do and how we can help them
Right.
if we want to improve the situation.
Absolutely, and it is very much the same in the U.S. It's a little bit. What I found is that it's a little bit different in at least my entrepreneurial space. But before this, I mean, I never talked about money, and in fact, it's considered sort of in the culture rude to talk about who's earning what and what your salary is with your coworker because they might be out earning you or you might be out earning them and you just don't know. What I have found is having made the switch to entrepreneurship, and my financial situation has really changed because I was an artist before, and now an entrepreneur, and so I've seen some really dramatic changes. People in our space, at the very least, we talk about it. We talk about, hey, how are you earning this year? How's business? How's this? How's that? How much do you charge for your services? Because that information is really valuable to us, because then we know how to price ourselves in the market and all that stuff, right? So I find that at least in our space, right, we know each other through the recognized expert community, and in that space, I find at least, the culture around money is much, much different. Do you find that too?
Yes, I do. I think it's a really useful and helpful way of looking at it to have a support network around you of people who are not afraid or ashamed or whatever to talk about it, because then you will have at least some sort of benchmark. I'm talking about business here and prices for how to position yourself in the market, especially if you are new doing this and if you've got imposter syndrome or just a hint of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It can become really, really difficult to actually charge what the market is willing to pay and not overthink it or undervalue yourself or undervalue the services because you think you're new, because you think people are never going to pay that or they're not willing to invest in what you have to offer and everything that comes with that, including self-esteem and self-confidence as a new entrepreneur and so on.
Right. Right. So how do you recommend that we change the conversation around money, right? Like maybe not for those of us that are entrepreneurs and might have a different culture, but maybe for somebody who's in a job and the cultures don't talk about money.
Yeah. Well, I suggest for my clients that they start with a very small circle of people that they trust and love. So basically, that can be either a family member or a very close friend. Sometimes it can be someone at work, either a supervisor or just a colleague, because if they are having issues and they're not saying anything, they need an ally in the workplace who can advocate for them, who can maybe negotiate on their behalf in terms of deadlines or even social engagements. Because if they know you are struggling at home, but you're trying to keep up with everyone else and not be excluded, maybe they can mitigate for some of that for you. But also, I think there's a lot of professionals now that you can actually go and have a discussion with. So you can go to your friends, you can go to your family, and you will have conversations in terms of just opening up and feeling comfortable to share this with someone. It's not necessarily that you are looking for a response or that the response that you're getting is going to help you change something. And the whole point here is not just to talk about it, but to talk about it with the idea of modifying it or improving it in the future. So I am an advocate of working with either a coach or a mentor or a consultant or even some of the services that local authorities might offer in terms of for the people who can't afford to pay for them themselves. I am a huge advocate of going and having a conversation at least, and then taking it from there. So that would be the first step. I think the second step is to go beyond that, and to really take small baby steps into having not so intimate conversations, but still actually including money into the conversation. Even if it's not so personal, but asking about salaries, for example, for a particular role or a particular title, not necessarily how much are you making, but what can I expect to earn as a management consultant, or whatever it might be, or as a junior level clerk, right? Yeah. And these kinds of information, they're available online. There are certain websites where you can go and benchmark, but when it comes to the reality of it, it's also subjective, and it depends on the person, it depends on the company and what they're looking for. Sometimes the title doesn't necessarily reflect the same job description, so you have to take that with a pinch of salt. If it says the title accountant, it doesn't mean that you have to go for the exact same salary, because an accountant can do an array, a bunch of things. Right. So I do want to empower people to be able to go to an interview confident that they can negotiate, knowing that they bring something to the table, and also having an idea of what the benchmark might be for an average accountant role, let's say. And then comparing that with what they know from their colleagues, from their friends, from other people that they've spoken about salary for an accountant with, they can then go in and actually secure a role that is more in line with what they're expected to do and the value that they bring to the table. So it's baby steps. I think in this space, a lot of people are starting to talk about there. I can see a lot more financial coaches joining the space, talking about money, talking about the emotions of money, and just inviting people into conversations like we're having now. And for people to be able to ask some questions, even if it's anonymously, so that we can get an idea of, I'm not the only one who is wondering this, or I'm not the only one who suffers with this problem. I'm not the only one who is in debt, and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, because it's true. We can feel really alone in our money struggles, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. What resources do you recommend for someone who might just be starting out and wanting to change, make some changes in their money situation?
Yeah, well, first of all, before I recommend resources, what I like to recommend to people is to get familiar with with their bank statements, for example, with everything that is already available to them, but they might not be looking at. So people avoid reading financial correspondence because they think they don't understand the terms, or they think, I shouldn't be reading this. This is not for me. What information am I going to get from there? Or they're avoiding it because they are afraid of what it might tell them. So I recommend for people to do research if they have a credit card, to understand how it is that they are being charged interest on that credit card. And if that's not something that they can understand from reading the paperwork that came with that card, they can ring the bank and ask them, can you please explain to me how is it that I'm being charged? Once you have an understanding of your own personal finances and where you are and what you're paying, how much you're paying, then there are a bunch of books available, and it really depends on what you want to focus on. If you want to focus on the mindset side and the emotion side, or if you want to focus on the practicalities and how to do budgeting or whatever. So there are plenty of resources out there. I had some books here. Let's see if I can. One of my favorite ones is this one. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Yeah. Then there's another one, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. What else have I got in here? I've got the, this is a hard one. This one is maybe a nice, easy read. You are a badass at making money. All sorts of books like these ones will help with an understanding of basic understanding. If you think of this, it might be a bit controversial because he talks about assets and liabilities in a very different way than what an accountant would do. But it's still a very good book to read to understand how money works, what happens, and what the things that you should be looking at in terms of being financially healthy, for example. At the same time, I do encourage people to create their own definition of financial success. I don't want them to look in a book and say, okay, let me lift this from here because it's given as an example and I want to achieve exactly the same thing. Or let me look around me at what my friends are doing or my peers and let me achieve the same things. Your goals have to be your own, and you have to really want to achieve them for a particular reason. If that reason is only because X, Y, Z is doing it as well, you are not going to be able to sustain that. And more importantly, at the end of it, when you will have reached that goal, you will not feel any better or any more accomplished than you are feeling now. So financial success, we don't have a standard for that. It's what you believe to be the standard for you. And if you think that having £1,000 in the bank as an emergency fund is what makes you successful, then you can live with that. And it speaks a lot about your attitude to risk and so on. For some people, if they don't have 100,000 in the bank, they feel anxious about it. And that's their definition of success. So it's a wide spectrum here. And although these books are inspiring and they are informational, I still want people to believe that they can create goals for themselves, and it's okay to have goals that are different than anyone else's, and to fight for those goals and believe in them and achieve them and feel successful.
I love that. I've long been a fan of Jen Sincero and the You Are a Badass series, right? And so when she came out with You Are a Badass at Making Money, I got it, and I was really, so I love that you're recommending it, because what I'm seeing about that is that book is so non-technical, right? And it speaks to you as in, as if it was your best friend, right? Like, you want something, okay, find a way to pay for it. That's, there was advice like that in the book, and it's, it's funny because I had never before in my life thought of it like that, right? So it sounds really simple, and it some of the advice is kind of like, oh, really? But it's things that people don't think of.
Yeah. The fact that it's simple doesn't make it easy, does it?
Right.
And sometimes the simplicity, we just dismiss it as being too simple. And it's actually the simple things that are probably more important as a basis, and then for you to move on with the more complicated stuff. So yeah, but for sure, some really amazing books. I actually have a couple of YouTube videos about books for people who are interested in improving their financial situation, or if they're new coaches, I have a couple of videos with books that I recommend on my YouTube channel.
Great, that's awesome. So who's your ideal client, and do you work with people sort of at all levels, or do you and all career paths?
I work with people who earn quite a bit of money, but they don't see much of it at the end of the month for whatever reason. So those are my clients for personal finances. In terms of the clients that I help with their business finances as well as personal finances, they are usually early stage business owners or entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of coaches, but also consultants and what you would call content creators or service-based business owners. And for them, we work on a bespoke service. So I understand that they might not be making quite a lot of money, or they have some blocks, and therefore we work towards their budget to see, okay, what do you need right now and how much do you have available to invest, and we'll put something together based on that. And most of the people that I work with are starting the business, and they're really passionate about it, but they don't necessarily know what it means to build a financially viable business in terms of the continuity of the business, whether what they charge and the offering that they're making and their business model is actually scalable or it's even profitable, whether they can sustain that full time. And we talk a lot about charging and pricing and selling conversations and negotiation, because there's a lot of intricacies between self-worth and how much people think that they should be charging, and there's imposter syndrome in there. So you can see there's a lot of coaching, pure coaching elements into this. But I do focus on the money element, because my goal eventually is to help them change that story. If they're not happy with the financial story as it is now, we are going to do whatever is necessary to change that story to something that they are more in line with.
I love that. I love that. How can people get in touch with you?
What my website is thesavvycorner.com. And
say that again.
thesavvycorner.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on various social media outlets, but my newest one is my YouTube channel, which is my name, Alisia Barcan -- The Savvy Corner. So
nice. Cool. And what do you do on your YouTube channel? Talk a little bit about that.
On my YouTube channel, I share my experience, other people's experiences, and my knowledge on how to manage your money, how to manage your business, and how to manage your mind around those two things.
Love it. Love it. So visit Alisa's LinkedIn. Follow her on LinkedIn. Connect with her on LinkedIn, and also take a look at her YouTube channel. She gives really great advice, and you've gotten a taste of it here. So, what advice do you have? What parting advice do you have for entrepreneurs that are just starting out? That might be just starting their business right now?
I think one important thing is for them to maybe talk to other entrepreneurs. When we start our business, we have this sort of expectation of how it's going to be like, what our days will look like, what we will end up doing. And I can almost guarantee that that's not how it's actually going to be. We think that we are going to spend all of our time doing what we love, and we forget about the business development side of things, and we forget that a lot of it is actually putting your business out there and creating content and having sales conversations. I'm talking, for example, for coaches. Before you can do any coaching, you have to do all of this. So expectations are really important. If you can talk to other people who have already done this and they've been doing it for a while, they can probably answer your questions about what it's going to look like and help manage those expectations. The second tip would be to have a good financial buffer before you start. Some people are successful immediately, but there's no way we can anticipate a global pandemic, for example, which might affect the business or might affect your ability to even build that business. If you don't have that financial buffer or another source of income, you might be in a difficult situation financially. And thirdly, if you're starting a business, I would say clarity is really important about what is it that you would like to do in that business, who is it that you can serve, and how. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to also include your own preferences into this. It doesn't have to be that you need to ignore what you love doing because you know there's demand on the market for this. At the same time, if there's demand on the market, but you kind of don't really like the idea of doing that for the next 20 years or so, it's maybe not a good match. So I always talk about the intersection between passion, experience, and demand, and kind of finding a niche that you can serve at the intersection of those three, so that you can have the momentum, have the motivation to continue doing it. You have the feasibility and the sustainability because there's demand on the market, and also the experience gives you the credibility and the social proof in front of your clients.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really great.
Thank you, Marie. Thanks for having me.